Hello and welcome to our living room. This is day 6 of the lockdown specials that we're doing every day at about this time, not exactly. And a quick apology to my friend Paul. I told him we'd be on at 7 today, and we're a couple of seconds late. What's 20 minutes between friends? We start with a bit of sad news, actually, in that we've just been reading, actually, how a 108-year-old lady who was one of Britain's oldest living people. She survived the Spanish flu in 1918, and she is thought to have become the oldest victim of coronavirus so far in the UK. Hilda Churchill died in a Salford care home on Saturday, just 8 days before her 119th birthday. And we also have news today that from the government's chief scientific advisor, namely to do with basically lockdown and the rather extreme measures that we're facing at the moment here in the UK. A very good evening to Fiona and to Rodney as well. How are you doing today, sir? We have been warned today by the Prime Minister that even tougher measures may be needed to stem the coronavirus. I mean, if we all stay at home, guys. Oh, and hello, Paul. Sorry for being a little bit late today, but you know how it is in the world of David. And Fiona says she can't hear us.
Hello. Is this okay?
Huge apologies, everyone, and welcome to our nightly broadcast about the coronavirus. I'm sorry for the lack of audio at the beginning because somebody forgot to switch the microphone on. So a very good evening to Rodney, to Fiona, and to my good friend Paul. Sorry, Paul, that we're a bit late today kicking off, but that's rock and roll, I guess, and it's not radio anymore. It's other stuff. Now. We kicked off this evening.
Can you hear us now? Yeah.
With some rather. Are we on now? I certainly hope so. Yes, jolly good. Now we kicked off this evening with a very sad story about a lady who was a survivor of the 1918 Spanish flu, and she is thought to have become the oldest victim of coronavirus here in the UK thus far. She died in a Salford care home on Saturday, just hours after testing positive for COVID-19, and just 8 days before her 109th birthday. And continuing in the kind of slightly bad news department, but before we kick on to all the better stuff, and hello, Mariusz as well. The Prime Minister has today warned that a tougher lockdown may be necessary. The government's kind of, and it won't be if we all follow the rules, but the government is monitoring everything carefully now. They've taken upon themselves powers to monitor mobile phones so that they know when we're being naughty and straying far from home. And Boris is going to send us basically a letter to say keep it up. Here where I am, everybody's being very well behaved, and I went to my local small supermarket today, and they were letting 4 of us in at a time, and we were all standing about 2 or 3 meters apart, which was good. Good evening, Judy. But these measures initially panned to be for sort of 12 weeks. There may be some kind of stuff, the Prime Minister has said today, going on for as long as perhaps 6 months, which would mean us tying up our evenings for quite some time.
Yes, and we also know that some supermarkets have getting the usual Saturday of family of 4 and 5 going shopping at the same time, which is really holding the logistics of them sticking to the guidelines. Because it's an offence if you are to be hanging around in more than 2, even if it is a family. Just have common sense. If you do go out shopping, just go 1 of you or 2 of you, but don't take the whole family, just for everybody else's sake.
Good evening, Michael. Thanks for joining us this evening. It's good to have you along. Desmond as well, Thea Yaswi, and Ian. Welcome to our little nightly Corona lockdown bulletin. Let's start with some positive stories, some good news, because it's not all doom and gloom, and you might think so if you watch the news every day, but honestly, it isn't. So, and there are some absolutely sort of heartwarming stories coming out there about, for example, people getting together. There's a comedian and writer whose name is Nick Doody, who posted in The Guardian a wonderful photo of his street. It's one of these long, thin Victorian terrace streets, and everybody's come to their front door with a cup of tea, and they're sitting on a chair, all nicely isolated from one another, and
Hello, Desmond.
they are celebrating a bit like the street parties we had at the Queen's kind of Jubilee, but everybody's 2 or 3 meters apart. So the sense of community doesn't definitely. And a very good evening to you, Sue. I saw your post this morning from Sean, and all our good wishes go to him. Doug, hello. Thank you for joining us on this lockdown special today. So life does go on. It's a bit of a pain. I mean, my 10-minute trip to the shops today, 5 of which were spent outside in terribly windy and horrible conditions, was the highlight of my week, I think. But that it is how it is, and we are saving literally tens of millions of lives. If we all stay home right now, all around the planet, then something like 40 million lives will be saved. 40 million people who would otherwise die will not die. And here in the UK, it's at least probably about 450,000 lives we're saving just by staying at home. It's not a big ask. So other kind of good stuff that's been going on in Switzerland. They've lit up the side of a mountain in the Alps to encourage people to kind of stay home. But it looks like a sort of little lasery sort of rainbow. It's a lovely little picture here, and that was kind of tweeted today. What a wonderful thing to light up the Matterhorn. I mean, the imagination of people sort of
During these times, yes, that's correct.
Yes. We're really kind of
We're
rising.
becoming very creative now. David, do you know what amphigori means?
I haven't got a clue, but my friend Paul does, and he's just written a book, and we were having a great chat this afternoon. And look, Paul, I haven't spoken to since probably 1981. That would be my guess. So how many years is that? 39 years. And so not just I'm reconnecting with the people who are normally in my life, but people that I haven't seen for an awfully long time are getting in touch kind of to see how I am and for me to see how they are. And suddenly, when the lockdown ends, we'll probably go out with Paul for a cup of tea or a pint or something. So it's there's good, and we must take good out of everything that we see all around us, and thank you, Desmond, for that message of support there, So then there are people posting pictures of what they're doing in the garden, having a peanut butter in the garden, just kind of day-to-day things. But, little things to sort of brighten our lives, to make us, to bring a little smile to our faces. And people throwing Pringles into a can, into the Pringles tub, and other snacks are available across the garden. Although I don't know what they do with the ones that miss.
I didn't show you that in TikTok. There was a story of this father just with the phone, and the teenage daughter just came from behind with masking tape and just to cut him with his phone, literally right in front of his face like that, all around masking tape. So everybody's having fun and trying to make the best out of these very challenging times.
Absolutely, and there are people. I've learnt cooking. I'm now a sort of 5-star cordon bleu chef. Not even
David, it was an omelette.
Well,
it was an omelette, but it's delicious omelette, by the way.
You're very
so the
kind.
thing is, with this in this lockdown, we are stuck with the families. It's like when we get the baby, we don't get a manual how to raise a baby.
Very
the same
much so.
with the COVID-19. We didn't get a manual. So
Very
we
much
have
so.
to be very creative and do the best. As parents, we really sometimes, it's not that we're the best parents, it's just that we are doing our best as parenting can be, yeah, in normal times. So now, in which we seem to be living in the same household, and we need to just cooperate with each other, because we don't have a manual for these things. It's completely changed juxtaposition of way of living, and uh, it is a paradigm shift completely.
It's a once in 100 year thing, isn't it? Oh, and hello, Jerzy. I hope you and the family are well, and do say hi to them from us. Also, hello, Renee. So, look, let's rewind 3 months, and it's here's to 2020, and all the world leaders raising a glass and this kind of thing, and a rosy future ahead. I seem to remember they did that in 2000 as well, and then 9/11 came along shortly afterwards. So, we always have to be braced for adversity, and we have to make the most of it. It's very important. Hello, Imtiaz. It's very important to stay informed, to stay upbeat, to stay happy, not to go kind of crazy, because we'd normally be zipping around the streets of our beautiful city, Cambridge, and now all we can do really is look at postcards sitting in the living room. But
And photos.
and photos of personal photos of our own, standing in front of famous buildings and so
Landmarks.
forth, and I still haven't taken you to all those museums. What do you got there, Irma?
Whatever, it's just basically a short history of parenting. Since when parents make mistakes in parenting, it's not because we don't love our children, but because we just don't know a better way. This is a book that I gave to my daughter, and I kept it years ago, and it just tells you that all they need is they need love. So in the same thing, we have to be creative in how we're going to give our love. Not precisely in I love you very much. It's just being quality love in terms of quality time, and really enjoying the little tiny things, and really being interested on their conversations with us in every single way. What do you think, David?
I do. That's a very important takeaway, and that brings us to kind of what is the principal theme of our little chat today in our living room, and it's about parenting. It's about children. It's about how we relate to our partners, and how all this is going to really shake up in this new modern world in which we find ourselves.
Yes.
A world which we don't quite know how long we'll be like this. It could be an optimistic scenario would be about 8 weeks. Sarah, how very kind of you to send that message, and thank you for being with us. Also, Tanya and Kevin again from last night. We don't know. The optimistic scenarios will be stuck here for 8 weeks, and we haven't even been here 1 week yet. Whoa. But it could be that it's going to be going on for longer. We're going to be doing these daily bulletins for as long as it goes on. We're going to be sitting here in front of the camera every night to try and lift your spirits a bit, inform you a bit, and to help you with the issues that we're all facing the same issues, and we're all facing them together. And together we are
That's right.
much stronger.
Let's just don't forget that our children's problems always begin at home, and in the home can be solved. At some certain point, we were so busy living our lives, with our businesses, with our jobs, with our friends, with ourselves sometimes. Why not? That we forget that education begins at home, and we left that to school. If anything goes bad, is the school problem, it's not ourselves. When in reality, education begins at home. So now we have the opportunity to really hone in our values as parents, and even if it happened to be that the family is split, we face all those challenges, isn't it, David? In which we need to really coordinate the activities of our children and let them be themselves. If, for example, happen to be from a separated home, you have to give your children the opportunity to express themselves, their love for the other parent, without judgment. Judgment leaves no good for anything. This is not a judgment day. This is our opportunity to really hone in our values in our families and be responsible as parents.
I do agree with that 100%. I'm totally on the case there. I'll tell you something. I was a very sickly child, and I had probably more time at home than I did at school in my early years, right up until secondary school. Really, I was off for more than I was on. And it was a time when we were given antibiotics an awful lot for trivial things, and hence that's not a very good thing for your body, because it kind of lessens your immune system, also makes stronger bugs. So because I was missing so much school, my parents did make a really strong effort to sort of home educate me to fill in the gaps, and you can see all the books behind us. That's not a sort of backdrop. That's the real room that we have at home, a bit like a sort of a library, if you like, and so that love of reading, of learning has stuck with me throughout my life. So and you know, I was a youngster. Oh, hello, Marie. It's very nice to see you again. We last saw you at that workshop, didn't we, with Piotr and Jay. Also, hello to Kay, to Carol, and hello to Sharon as well, who's just joined us. So the fact that I was my parents spent a long time with me. My dad actually had two jobs. He had his day job and he had an evening job, just to sort of make ends meet. But he nonetheless found the time to bond with me and to teach me all that he knew, and to instill in me that love of learning and knowing and that kind of thing. So now we've got an opportunity to do this. We can't outsource it all to the school anymore. There might be some online classes, but you know, they're going to be quite kind of limited. There are limited opportunities for our children to interact with their friends at best across sort of social media platforms at the moment. We as parents, we have to step in and we have to
Yes,
to
that's right.
fill the breach.
And it's a way. It's an opportunity also for us to learn the way they learn, which is completely different to what we learn. In my case, I was born in Mexico, and I found when my children were young and at home and in school, found first of all the language barrier. Being a Spanish speaker and having to explain maths in English, it was a no-no. Luckily, I was blessed with my son being able to correlate very well with mathematics. That would help me to teach my daughter. So he would get his whiteboard, and work the different equations just to get to the same result. So it was for me a learning curve as a parent in those days. So now they're not at home, but we keep communicating and we keep challenging with a chess game online. So it's an opportunity to rediscover.
Yes. I mean, I found an online chess game today. It's actually called chess.com, and it's free. And obviously, I was terrified at joining our son for a game of chess. So I had one or two games against the computer first, and by taking back a few moves, I was
Isn't
able
that
to
called
win.
cheating?
It might be, but don't tell him. Okay, that's a little kind of secret. I'm a great fan of lists. I try to do at least one in every one of these little episodes, and I came across it's the top parenting trends of 2020, written presumably towards the end of 2019. So I thought it'd be quite interesting to have a look at those, because clearly everything's a bit different now, and the game has changed. Good evening to you, John, and oh, hello, a very good evening to Lee, who we met when we were at his event. Was it last year or the year before?
Hello, Lee.
It's very nice to have you on board, and to Sharon, thank you for sending me a list of 50 books that everybody can read. You'll see that in the comments, which is a wonderful resource.
Yeah.
How things have changed in the last kind of 3 months. So there was a checklist of important things that might change in respect of parenting this year, and so here we go with a quick run through. Enviro-conscious parenting, spurred by Greta Thunberg and others who were pioneering a friendly to the environment kind of movement. Well, we've done that, haven't we, in a sense, because we're not doing the school run anymore in the car. So that's sort of solved itself. And so again, maybe, I mean, in Australia, I know in the outback, it certainly used to be the case when I was young, although I've never been to Australia, but the children would take their lessons by radio, and there'd be a little radio receiver and a microphone, and the child's education would happen that way, and that they'd be living in the middle of a desert somewhere, but they would get their education, and they didn't need to burn a lot of petroleum. So
Yeah.
who knows? It would be very interesting to see how much of the changes that we're seeing will become permanent changes. Plastic-free living is another one. Well, I suppose we're not going to be having all that stuff anymore shipping from the supermarket, because when we get it home anyway, we want to rinse it and clean it and all this kind of thing. So packaging is probably going to minimise a bit as well. I wouldn't be at all surprised if that happens. And now our own royal family here in the UK have started this trend, but there's talk of there being a trend to downsize families, to have smaller families, and I think this trend may persist, particularly when people are stuck in very small accommodation units with a lot of kids. That kind of thing is not going to be very attractive anymore. I mean, I can see reasons why when people are stuck at home, the birth rate might rise, but that's another topic for another day, I think. Brendan, good evening to you, sir. Thank you for joining us this evening. He sent us a link to the Grace show, and also Rick. Thank you for joining us tonight. It's great to have you on board. And also hello to Sue, and to Andrew. My goodness me. We're looking at kind of the dynamics of families, and how that might change in this time of crisis that we are currently facing. And so I've got this list. I'm very fond of lists of things that the experts were predicting that might happen this year. Here's one that might not happen, or might happen: switching television for games. Certainly not if it's sports that are going on outside. There's so much you can do if you have a garden. We don't all have gardens, of course. Maybe they mean games in the sense of things you play on the computer. That's a little bit past my time. And I remember there was a game of kind of tennis where a little dot used to go across the screen in the 1970s, but that's about the limit. Whenever our son's playing a football game, as I think I mentioned the other day, I have to ask him whether it's real players or not. And Sharon says tent making is good. You can do that. I remember my daughter, when she was very young, I made her a tent at home in the living room, and she really got into that. Our friend Joanna has made one for their daughter Ali as well. So which is very nice. Good evening to Avni and to Andy. Kids dressing up in parents' clothes. Now there's a thing.
Yes.
Now there's a thing. That's much better than the parents dressing up in each other's clothes, isn't it? Really, I'm very in favour of that. I didn't say that.
That's fun for children, for younger children. I remember my two. They would swap clothes, and they would just come back, and one was Craig and the other was Kim, and I was okay. Which one is who? I had to pretend. But yes, it's amazing how they entertain themselves and entertain us.
Yes. Now, another trend that was suggested at the end of last year, and I don't know whether this can work in the context of the online world, but maybe yes, co-working nurseries, because there are a lot of flexible and freelancing parents at the moment, and it's been suggested that nurseries would have a physical sort of hangout place where parents could catch up on their emails and watch their kids at the same time. I wonder if something like that could happen now in the online world, if we all set up a Zoom call or something like this. It's a thought, and certainly communities are coming together now increasingly. And so, hello Joshua, haven't seen you for a couple of years now. Hope all's well with you, and hello second Paul, and hello Michael as well. Thank you for joining us this evening on our little sort of fireside chat without a fire. Other things, period parties. Well, to be honest, I saw a video of a girl dressed up as the lead character from Frozen, a lady that is performing a Christmas party over a video link, a birthday party for some children. So that's the thing, that the magician or the entertainer or whatever may now join us by video link. And good evening, Anita. Hope you're well, and Tara as well. It's we are pioneers in this brave new world that we
Yes.
find ourselves. And my mentor was very much a pioneer. He lived, he was born in 1908, and he was pioneering in the world of real estate many years ago. We'll talk about him one day as well. But he was breaking new ground, and he's trying to do nice things for people, and he's trying to make the world better. And most of the stuff that he did is still going strong today, and making people's lives better. Micro scheduling, well, that's something that is much easier in the online world as well. My productivity has gone through the roof now because
Yes.
rather than traveling around to meetings, I can zip from place to place in a matter of a few seconds. And when we do our Tuesday night slot, and we mustn't be a little bit late for that as we were tonight, when we do our Tuesday night slot, I'll be switching it off, and 3 minutes later I'll be on the radio just by sort of moving a little bit to the left where we've got a microphone just out of shot here. And so that's a very efficient way to use our times, and a lot of it. And good evening, Piotr. I hope you're well this evening. And so a lot of the creative things that we can do with our children, these are bonding times. You'll never have these times again, especially if you've got younger children. You won't have these times again. So building a little kitchen, as our friend recently did, and making mud pies with the daughter in the garden is a wonderful experience.
Another of our friend, her son, she's got the joke of the day,
Yes.
which I think is hilarious every time.
Mhm.
And it's a way of encouraging to become their own personas based on your own values. So this is a great opportunity. If we were to ask a question, what would we do if our aim was a world based on love? This is the opportunity to really hone the values on the family of love, respect, and understanding. If, like I mentioned before, if you happen to be a big family and then you have teenagers and young children because they're two different families and one together, you have to keep an entertainment. So who's going to be the boss in here? So the little one is going to want to lead because he's got the personality, and then you have the other one say, yes, but I'm the boss. But then it just amalgamates very nicely together. Then you get to have fabulous young adults. One of my friends, she just sent us a message of her daughter, Cecilia Ventura, launching a single, Electricity, which I think it was very good online. So this kind of a bringing of understanding or really getting to know your child, it just pays huge rewards as parents. So now that we're stuck at home, now that we didn't have the manual for the baby, we don't have the manual for COVID-19, but we have the manual of our lives, of our own knowledge of what is right and what is wrong. And sometimes what the things that we think are right are completely wrong. I know it's a dichotomy, but the children become our teachers. How? By really awakening the child within, the one we have inside, that curious mind that has seen this culture of humanity, well, us humans, evolve into what we are now. So again, this is your opportunity, fabulous opportunity. If you don't happen to have children, hey, get your own child in here and try to nurture, try to learn.
A very good evening to Gillian, who's watching us tonight in Wales, to Dave as well, and to Ranjan. I really enjoyed your Corona special with Andrew and the others the other day, so please keep them coming. I'm a great fan of yours. Sharon has got a lot of information here about things to do with children, and thank you for all of these. Making mud pies, she says, with them, where they wear gloves, and mud time geography, mud time science and poetry. So exploring the whole of the national curriculum through the vehicle of mud. That's just wonderful.
Yeah, that's great. That's kind of also chemistry, isn't it? Now, we touch the love side of things, which is good and fair enough, and it's great because it's going to make us a better society of understanding and respect. But how about economics? Economics, can we teach them economics? I don't know, family home.
The economics of the family is something we'll come to kind of later in the broadcast, if we may, because I'm into toys and games at the moment, and my head is kind of locked around these.
Now
I'm
you
getting
know who
very
the child
excited.
is.
I'm
Yeah,
getting
yeah.
the big child in me is getting very excited about the things we can do with our children. Because I know Michael, who joined us earlier. Michael, if you're still watching, I know Michael's got a beautiful daughter, and who will be in need of some kind of family stuff to do in the home now that the daily joyous trip to school isn't kind of happening anymore. And we've got some more suggestions here coming in. Times tables with the BBC and all sorts of household stuff, and dare I say it, they can help with the tidying up around the home as well, which instills good habits kind of early on, I guess.
Actually, yes.
Turning tables upside down to make dens and boats. That's something I used to do. Once I did it inadvertently with my pram, and my mother went all hysterical. But Chester Zoo apparently was doing some live videos and animals talks, taking people around the zoo today, which I think was lovely. And we talked yesterday, didn't we, about the aquarium type thing where they let the penguins have a waddle around and say hello to the sharks from the safety of a big thick piece of glass and that kind of thing. And so reflexology, there's a thing to do with children. That's really taking it up, taking the thing up to the next notch. Good evening, Paul. Thank you for joining us.
Who's a reflexology? Yes.
Reflexology is up there. Sharon suggested that.
It is very good. It's a way of understanding your own body and your own dynamics within yourself.
Very much so.
The reflexology. Today I had a very good session in terms of a technique that I'm studying, and it's called in which you touch the Reiki reflexology, but it's a nice technique. It just makes you feel very, very good.
It's all cool. So the dynamics of the family is the thing I like to sort of talk about next, because we are completely, we're born a sort of open book with certain propensities to learn things and stuff, but kind of a lot of who we are today comes from those early years. And there was on the sort of we've done 4 or 5 episodes without mentioning Hitler, so it's time. Look at the look of horror.
Oh my God.
There's a historian from Oxford University, that other place, called Alan Bullock, and he wrote a book called Hitler and Stalin: Parallel Lives, about how they both had really horrible fathers and how that sort of influenced them, and our own influences. But we've got good, positive early influences, and if our role models in our family set the bar high, then we've got it easy in life, and we're going to sort of roll forwards. The dynamics of the modern family, where there may be kind of stepchildren and this kind of thing, makes everything perhaps a bit more complicated. But
also when they're teenagers, teenagers tend to, obviously we were all teenagers once, and it is very difficult sometimes to deal with the hormones and all the changes that are going through our brains, and more so if we happen to go through a personal situation with our parents, that they're arguing or something is happening, so we don't know how to manage these emotions. So as parents of teenagers, we have to really understand that they need their space, and they need their understanding, and they need to be understood, and you have to really pay attention to the clues that they're giving you. Sometimes they're not verbal clues, they're some other kind of clues that as parent you only know that something is not quite right. So then is when you really have to address those things by respect and understanding.
Yes, absolutely. Now, do you know we learnt a new word from a great new word from my friend. Goodbye, Sharon. Thank you for your terrific contributions this evening. A new word that I've just discovered, that's 2 new words in the space of a very short broadcast. A genogram, and this is something that therapists will often use to map complicated family relationships, to give themselves a better idea of the sort of dynamic of what's going on there, and to help them to more easily assist their clients. And so that's a very interesting. So the old stereotypes of the grumpy grandfather or something, and the obnoxious uncle and the hysterical aunt or something, don't always they no longer apply, and so even before we came into to sort of ground zero of lockdown, there were changes going on in the world, and it's important to understand and to embrace change. I think because
Yeah.
change is most often a good thing.
I think communication, media, and all the accessibility that our children and our we ourselves have in terms of technology of access communication, it's a tsunami of information. So you're not only dealing with the stuff that's going within you, but also trying to deal with the thing that's going from the outer, from coming from other people, from other information, and you don't know what to do with it. So in that case is when we as parents, if we don't know how to deal with, there are some kind of government bodies in which ideally they will give you parenting classes around the time the birth of the child. They give you psychological support in relationships if you think that your relationship is just about breaking up. So you need to get the support for your children, because like we said at the beginning of our broadcast, is that education starts at home, and you don't want to leave a child that you're responsible for out there alone. If you cannot do it yourself, always get the support that it might come your way, but try to make sure that it's a proper support available, that's very substantiated with knowledge.
Now, two things that a parent dreads hearing are one of these things we won't be hearing so much at the moment, which is "Are we there yet?" And I think there was actually a film of that title made as well. Are we there yet? You know, and you know, you've just set out 5 minutes ago, and you've just barely reached the end of the drive. But the other one is "I'm bored." And I think we're probably more likely to hear that in the days and weeks ahead than maybe at other times. And so, you know, the hundreds of ways in which we can address that are possibly slightly less at the moment. Although, you know, by being imaginative, I mean, when I was young, we didn't have, I'm sounding like one of those Monty Python Yorkshiremen now, but we didn't have computer games, and we didn't have computers, and we didn't have Skype, and we didn't have a lot of the technology and a lot of the things that today we take for granted, which help us to connect. And in fact, in our home, we didn't even have our own phone line as such. We had because it was out in the countryside, we shared our phone line with somebody else, so there were two houses sharing the same phone line, and when you wanted to use the phone, first of all you had to lift it up and see if they were talking, then you had to press a little button to claim the line for yourself, and obviously not tell the neighbours off, although it would take them 10 minutes to arrive to chastise you afterwards should you do that
So
kind of thing.
if they're bored, how can you deal with that if they say I'm bored?
Well,
Upskilling them?
I think that's right. I think one skill that's very important that we can pass on to our children is how to make their own fun. And we had some of the games that we had as children were kind of very educational, and they were inspiring. Even in the sort of nuts and bolts, what they're inspiring children to do their own thing in a way that is less so now. I'm thinking of the children's toy Meccano, which probably spawned a whole generation of architects and engineers and things. And back then, nowadays, I believe Meccano still exists, and you just have a picture of an aeroplane or a ship or something and instructions on how to build it. But we as kids, we didn't look at those instructions. Good evening, Philip, and good evening, Asma. We're just talking about the dynamics of the family, and I'm talking about sort of the way that children's toys have changed. Another toy that was a perennial favourite is Lego. And now again you have sort of branded Harry Potter Lego or Titanic Lego or whatever it is, Simpsons Lego, I don't know, I've just made those up. But we just used to have a load of bricks, and so we could make the Champs-Élysées, Notre Dame, the Houses of Parliament, or the shed at the bottom of the garden, and our imaginations were running the show, and it was a blank sheet of paper. I saw one of these TV shows a couple of years back, actually, where some modern school children were given Meccano and Lego without instructions, and they were just sitting there going, huh? What do we do with this? What's it for? Is it some kind of hat? You know, and so I think now we can stimulate our children's imagination, and we can try to make them more self-reliant, more self-propelling, because clearly you won't be able to spend the time 24/7 with them. But you will have them 24/7. So the more things that they can do to amuse themselves in the context of the sort of locked down family, I think the better that's going to be for all concerned.
That's correct. That's correct.
Yeah, when you do force children to entertain themselves, I'm not talking about handcuffing them to the furniture or anything like that. But when you
Why not?
encourage them, when you encourage them, the one thing it gives is it gives them the opportunity to be introspective, to look inside themselves and to discover. To discover themselves, to discover who they are, to discover what rocks their world, to discover what floats their boat, what makes them tick. And I think that's probably the most wonderful gift that any parent can give to their child.
I think the best gift that as parents, if you are to have this approach towards your family in these times of uncertainty, is that the gift is for you to keep, and for you to have. Yes, it's as part of human nature, we tend to be egotistical by nature. However, when it comes to families, more so if you are the kind of family-oriented person, you tend to give out a lot of yourself. Yes, so here's a time for you to really go around these circles and learn yourself from your family and do your best, really, in these times. Teach them economics. That's one of the things that I wanted to touch, David, in terms of teaching our children how economy affects the decisions that we make in the future and now.
Yes,
I don't know if it makes sense.
well, I think that can be sort of dealt with quite quickly, really, by saying, give them pocket money and show them how to save and to economise. And if there's that thing in the shop window, don't go and get it for them. Make them save up for it. Boom.
Yep.
Because that's an introduction to the real world, isn't it, really? Yerge agrees with me. He says instructions are boring. Ha ha. And coming back to boredom, when I was 21, which was a year or two ago, I had a friend, and her boyfriend made for her this jar. And it had lots of little folded bits of paper with reasons why he loved her written inside it. The whole jar was full, and so whenever she was feeling down, she could sort of take one up. But it occurs to me that we could use something like that for children as well. We could have an "I'm bored" jar where we write simple things in there, and every time our son or daughter comes to us with a question, we pull something out of there and we say, make a tapestry out of shoelaces or whatever it might be, and just having some rainy day ideas, which you can probably get from websites and from books or whatever, but just write them down on little slips of paper, fold them up nicely, and put them in a little old coffee jar.
Other things, if you have teenage children or older children, I'm sure you still have some kind of mysterious box somewhere in the attic in which you kept the stuff that you didn't use for the birthday parties, or the stuff that you didn't use that you thought you could use with them when they were little, but now they're too old. So now's the opportunity, because you will be amazed that they get very, very interested into these things, because you bring back lovely memories from they when growing up. For example, today I found one of those boxes. In fact, I was going to ask you to play that game with me for one of the parties, which is pin the tail to the donkey.
And who would be the donkey?
Not me. So it's just a fantastic opportunity, to be honest, for you to learn about yourself and to keep these memories forever.
Now, my good friend Robert, I don't think he's with us this evening, although he may be. His son really liked forts. So not only they'd go to lots of sort of castles or sort of recreated ones for children, and they'd build them out of Lego or whatever, but they'd make sort of almost life-size ones with furniture around the home. And they would, and that was something that they really liked, and that was a lovely way to spend winter evenings. And a lot of these traditional things, they don't need a lot of expenditure. They just need a little bit of imagination, and maybe remember what we did as kids: hide and seek, fabulous game.
Yeah.
Absolutely fabulous game. We were playing that with our friend little Ali recently, who is
Oh
only about so
yes.
tall and is
Oh,
so
she's doing
charming
well.
and lovely and an absolutely delightful young lady. And you know, just to see the kids' eyes light up, or if you can show them Thunderbirds. That was a lovely TV show from when I was little, and a sort of puppet
Is that the
show where
one?
all the puppets did
Yeah, I
that.
was.
And it got reshown again in the 1990s. They made a new CGI version as well. But I think nothing beats the jerky puppets and the jerky heads and that kind of thing. And you know, it's great. All that sort of stuff is absolutely great. And yes, they ruined Bob the Builder when they CGI'd him and made him all streamlined and everything. But you know, that's just me.
Mm-hmm.
And then well, yoga, fitness, this kind of thing is a wonderful thing to share with your
Yes,
children.
it is a good thing to do it together. If you get to have, for example, there was a guy giving some free tuition. I think it's a hit. I can't remember his name. I don't know if anyone of you know his name. But he's giving free lessons. So if you are this kind of a sporty kind of person, just join these lessons online. And then just get the family together. If you happen to have a small room, well, just jump up and down, basically, just hit, basically. And yes, do that. Yoga, there's exercise, there's going up and down the stairs. That's another game that I think of. In fact, I was going to invite you to play that. This is my running bottle, which I can use. So instead of going out miles after miles, which I cannot do just now, it's going up and down the stairs with this one.
Yeah, and it works it also works. I can see that as a very good kind of spirit level for when hubby does a bit of DIY. So you know, it's multifaceted now. You know, we're putting up shelves and that kind of thing. On Andrew Marr's show this morning, which was a great show, and they've sort of reimagined that for the isolationist era. I think he was in the news studio this morning, and all the guests were coming remotely from their home locations or whatever. But he had this fellow whose name I forget, who is a health and fitness guy who's doing sort of daily 30-minute routines for children every single day that they can do, like a sort of morning warm up for PE and this kind of thing. And he's been having a lot of press inquiries and millions of
There's a lot of
views on
solidarity out
YouTube.
there. A lot of solidarity out there, and for you to use, and for anybody to use. Really, you don't have to have children to have fun. You have your inner child. Another thing I was going to say to you, David, that I forgot.
Oh well, in that case we'll pick up and we'll come back to it. And so anyway, there are 101 things to do when our children are bored. To cut a long story short, we can only do about 47 of them at the moment because we'll be handcuffed. Otherwise, if we have, for example, I don't know, an Easter egg hunt in the park, we'll probably be handcuffed and led away in a Black Maria. So you know, have a Lego hunt, hide 20 pieces of Lego around the house and then have some coloured bits of paper and get the children to find them and put them on the things. The youngsters.
A word of warning: not all children like this hyperactivity thing. Some other ones are introspective, so then you have to adapt. If you happen to be this kind of upright parent and your child is just introspective, you have to really understand how to get in there and I don't know, read a book, learn philosophy. I remember I was about 10 years old when I first found a set of cards which thoughts of philosophers and thinkers, great thinkers, and one of them that really struck home and is from Napoleon, which is "You're the architect of your own destiny." Here we are. This is the opportunity.
Absolutely so, absolutely so. And my thoughts just sort of randomly really turned to a teenager in isolation, namely Anne Frank, who did the most remarkable things under very, very difficult circumstances. And it occurred to me that teenagers who are confined at the moment will have particular issues, which you know. To add to all the sort of normal angst of being a teenager, being confined to home, maybe not able to see their best friends or their boyfriends or their girlfriends, will require special extra amount of parenting, parental acceptance. You can't kind of, I can't emphasize enough how important that is for a teen, because they all struggle, and sometimes with very tragic consequences. So we need to try and understand and to always be there, the listening ear for our children.
There's one key word, and that key word is 4 letters: love. That's
Yes.
what it is. Love in the way of understanding, accepting, not judgmental, understanding their needs, be
Yes.
there for them.
Yes.
After all, you brought them here, so that's your bill. So yeah.
Because I suppose in those teenage years, it's when you stop kind of following mummy or daddy around sort of unquestioningly as if they're a sort of higher being, and you come to sort of start questioning things, and you're trying to discover who you are. So we need to help and to facilitate that process, because stress, depression, and all these other factors are going to play a part in this.
Mm-hmm.
And even bullying, because there's social media, there's online bullying. So even though our children now are not in the school environment, it's important to be vigilant against the problems that they face in the modern world. Some of them fairly unique. And motivation, again, I mean, the youngsters will say, oh yeah, that I'm bored, but kind of teenage boredom is another thing
Yeah.
as well. And
Yeah.
and, 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 and so, if we can help our children through that very painful time, it will be good.
I think when you are a teenager, I'm trying to remember, that was a long time ago, so when I was a teenager, but it's a way of finding yourself, how to become an adult. So if you teach by example, and if you get together to cook something simple or complex, just follow the instructions and do things together. Even a simple cereal. David and me, we always prepare our cereal together, or breakfast together, and it's a combination of fresh fruit, and it is very elaborate. So, but those things bond the family cohesion. So that's, it's just a fabulous time, like I say, to continue to go through these challenging times of being stuck at home uh, as a unit.
Yes, and the last thing I'd like to sort of deal with today is some children who've grown up. And so they're no longer in the parental home, or indeed sometimes as a product of divorce, the parents who normally would have weekend access or whatever are not going to. So this big business of being separated from your children. How do we address that?
I think well, the best way to address that is that it was your problem with your partner, husband, significant other, and that is no longer with you. Uh, it might have been a very bad time when that split of brokerage or the marriage of divorce happened. However, that was your problem, not your children's problem. So you must separate all that. So if now with this COVID-19 that we all are stuck at home, and you have and the child is with you, but wants to be in touch with the other parent, you must allow that without judgment. So you
Yes,
mustn't give them the privacy to explain to express their love, because it's impossible to is the father or the mother. So
yes,
who are we to criticize even that? They
and
are their own persona.
yes, and the second scenario, as in our case, is we're not living with our adult children, and we're only able to we're not even able to. I mean, our last trip, which was a bit naughty, it was on Mother's Day, but which we weren't supposed to. But don't tell anyone. But now we're absolutely not allowed to go there at all, and so. How do we kind of maintain those links with children who have? I mean, now, even though our son lives just down the road, a short 30 minutes in the car, he might as well be in Mexico, because we're only seeing him on a screen, and we know this is going to persist for a good few weeks. So how to address that? And I think, looking at parents whose children have actually emigrated and gone abroad is perhaps a good sort of good lesson to learn. And very often they have a gap year at uni, don't they?
Yeah.
And where they will travel around the globe. So maybe if we think of it in that sort of context, if we think of it as an opportunity for our children to explore and to get a bit of self-expression and to learn more about the world and about themselves. Perhaps that is the best way to look at this kind of thing.
Mm. I don't know if, in my case, not seeing my son or daughter is a bit apprehensive also, because obviously we don't know what's going to happen. If anybody's to fall ill, that's a no-go area. We can't see them. We have to be perhaps hospitalized without seeing them. So if that's to happen, that's when resilience has to be built. So even if we're at distance, I don't allow to show any kind of worry or anything, because that is not going to lead us anywhere. So it's just a matter of keeping focused and keeping engaged with them from afar, and just tell them everything is going to be okay, because you know what, everything is going to be outright
Yes,
all right.
absolutely. And I can't stress enough the importance of giving our children a bit of space in their lives. And I mean, I remember from when I was a youngster, I grew up in the small town of Colchester, and then I went to London. And my parents, wouldn't ring me up every day to bombard me lots of questions. Are you still alive? And this kind of thing. Although they probably were worried senseless, but, they it allowed me the opportunity to sort of determine the frequency of the contact with them, which
Yeah.
was sort of 2 or 3 times a week, every couple of days. And when there was contact, I wouldn't bombard them with lots of questions. I would be more of a listener, and I would allow them to, I would empower them by letting them lead the conversation, letting them
Yeah.
share with me all their uplifting moments and what was going on, and being supportive where I could, but without being intrusive. And I think that was kind of quite important.
Mm-hmm. Yes, but also if you want to give a space, you also you have to give a structure of the relationship, and the space. Allocate certain times for their own space, and certain time for family time, energy, focus, and streamlining everything.
Oh yes, because a couple of 100 years ago, all the kids and the grandchildren, everything would all have been in the same town, and you just hop on the horse and cart and go to the other side of Main Street. But clearly that doesn't happen anymore in the sort of world we have now, where we have aeroplanes and cars and trains and all this sort of thing. So in the one hand, this opportunity to travel brings us together, but in the other hand as well, it can push us apart. And we have to be careful not to let that happen when it's our own flesh and blood. I
So
think
we
that's
kind of need to do our own is it Bear Grylls? Bear Grylls survival
Oh yes,
kit.
oh yes, that's
But
right.
we know in the jungle we are in the house.
Sharon's come back again after supper, and she says, when my 21 and 24-year-old girls come home, it's like going back 12 years, and that's true. That is a wonderful feeling. Good evening, Olga. Thank you for joining us. Coming back to Sharon, we have cats and a big TV, so they're a draw for the girls to come back, and that is nice as well, because often you will get pets for your children, and then the children might fly the nest, but the pets are still around, and it is an anchor that gets that gets the children coming back. It kind of really is. It really is. And Yeah, and it's not like, see, it's not like our children have packed their bags and have gone to Australia, because that would be a biggie. My father came from a huge family, and there were 6 brothers and one sister, and families were big in those days. And then one of the brothers
I'm
goes
one of
to,
5.
there you go, and one of the brothers went to Australia, and I've only met those cousins and that side of the family, once or twice in my life when they've come here, and I've never been there because I'm not that adventurous, and so that's, that is a fairly unique phenomenon that is unique to our age, I guess, and it's something to be aware of, I think, and we have the experience of people who've been through that. We can read their stories online in magazines or whatever, and I think that's a source of help for those of us. We're all in the same boat right now. We're all isolated from our children, but it's good for them. It's good for us, because we're not going to make them ill. They're not going to make us ill, and this horrible bug that's going around is going to kind of shrivel up and wither away. And that's what it's all about, at the end of the day,
Yeah.
isn't it, really? And
It's about keeping positive in these perilous times.
absolutely. And our son is just 21 and is having to completely fend for himself now. I mean, he's got his girlfriend there, but he's fending for himself in a more extreme way than might otherwise have been necessary. So this will be very good for him when when the time comes to have kids of his own, and you know he's well planted in his own flat now, and everything's kind of working out, and it's great to see that, albeit from a distance. It's a
Yeah.
very, very, very encouraging sign. It
For
really
me, it's
is.
very uplifting because I know that if there's any problem, even although I'm not physically with them, I'm here, and using communication and technology.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you so very, very much for your company this evening, for kind of sticking with us. I hope you found some insights or some uplifting anecdotes or stories or whatever in what we've shared tonight. We will be back at the same time tomorrow, and so when I say the same time, we're not sort of like we're not BBC One. And oh, Sharon says that her dad was one of 11.
Oh my
There
gosh!
were 8 boys, all of whom were boxers. My dad was a boxer as well. Funny enough, he didn't win any kind of championships and everything, but with again a tough mum, and that's how it was back then. The sort of matriarchal thing where dad was far away working, you know, and mum, with 11 children, you'd have to be a tough mum, wouldn't you?
Oh yes. In
Can
other
can
words,
you
yeah.
imagine? Can you imagine? But thank you so much for us from us. It's been a real pleasure to have you with us. We will be talking about some more issues tomorrow, and in the meantime, stay safe and have a really great evening. And I hope tomorrow is good for you.